Hey friends, this is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to talk about the counter economy and the Underground Railroad. But before we do that, I'd like to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com where you can get all of our latest content. Of course, if you look at the website, you can see it's a little bit behind being updated. I've just been so busy, but I'm working on getting all the content that's on YouTube and elsewhere put on the website, so please give me a few days or so. But you can follow us on Minds, you can follow us on Steemit, DTube, join our Discord channel, sign up for our text list updates via Remind. You can also follow us on BitChute if you don't prefer YouTube, and I recommend you do that. And if you'd like to support, you can do so through patreon.com/DerrickBroze or subscribestar.com/Derrick-Broze. And you can sign up for our email newsletter. And finally, if you'd like to get some kratom or CBD, I recommend you do it through My Brave Botanicals because it helps support my efforts more than ever, and I need your help to continue doing these reports and investigations and, just looking at important topics from around the world, and I hope you guys will continue to support. So, today is called the Counter-Economic Underground Railroad, which is a new concept I've been working on in my mind for a few months, and it's going to be coming out in full-fledged form, hopefully by December. But today we're going to do a little introduction to what exactly the Counter-Economic Underground Railroad is. So to start, let's discuss the counter-economy. Just in case you've happened upon my channel and this video and you have no idea what the counter economy is, I'm going to ask you to go back to square one to read my essay, which is a chapter from my book, Manifesto of the Free Humans, What is Agorism? A History of Agorist Theory and Practice, and this will introduce you to Agorism and to the counter economy and pretty much everything you need to know to understand this video. But the short and sweet version is that the counter economy is the economy that exists outside of the statist white market, outside of the state's hands. It's the underground economy, the informal economy, the counter economy, the black and gray market. Of course, Samuel Konkin III, right here, this man, the way he distinguished this from just any old black market is that in the context of libertarianism and voluntarism and anarchism and agorism, the black market is the market where the state considers something to be illegal, but it doesn't include violent actions. So again, all nonviolent economic activity that the state considers to be illegal, illicit, or that they would prefer you to get permits. Konkin preferred to encourage people to jump out of that economy and to join the counter economy, and the idea being that the more and more of us exit from the status economy with our money, our time, our energy, and I would even say our spiritual support of that system, we move towards the counter economy, towards a place where there is the agora, where there is some semblance of freedom, where people can trade ideas and goods and resources without a third party taxing them or intervening or interfering in any way. And I'd also remind you guys or request that you guys check out my essay, Vertical and Horizontal Agorism, which is again coming from that same book, Manifesto of the Free Humans, and it sort of describes my vision of how to move vertically through the counter economy and horizontally, and I'll just leave it at that. This essay explains more about the concept, but I think you guys probably get a general basis of what the counter economy is. I will throw out a couple more links that I recommend checking out. This is a short little essay I wrote called "The Answer is Economic Secession," and just talking about agorism, but in a very kind of short and sweet version that some of you might be able to digest a little bit easier. And then finally, this is an essay that I found from Konkin himself, which appeared in Facets of Liberty, a Libertarian Primer, published in 1985, called The Counter Economy Alternative, where he breaks it down even further and explains what he considers a counter-economic libertarian to be, and what exactly that, how you can do that. So that's generally the idea of what the counter economy is. Now, just a little bit more background. A couple months ago, I reviewed Konkin's book, Counter Economics from the Back Alleys to the Stars, the final work from Samuel Konkin III. And this book was meant to be his magnum opus, his counter economics book, all about the history, the foundation, and the expansion of the counter economic science or the counter economic school of thought. He wanted this to be comparable to Marx's Das Kapital. This was going to be like the Agorist manifesto type book. And I did a book review of this and kind of outlined everything that I found. And there's a lot of good stuff. This article is fairly long, but if you're a nerd for Samuel Konkin and Agorism and counter economics, I think you'll probably enjoy that. And the reason I mention that, and the reason the topic of discussion is the counter-economic Underground Railroad, is I told you guys a few months back that I actually planned to finish this book. Well, that was my original plan. I know that Konkin wrote Counter Economics. He had a number of chapters. You can see them listed right here. These are the chapters that he had worked on and others that he was trying to finish. And it's really interesting. And I realized that, I was going to attempt to finish his book. But honestly, my plans have changed. I don't think I can finish his book in the way that he meant it to. Instead, I'm taking inspiration from his book. I'm updating it and adopting it for the digital age, for the technocratic era, for the 5G smart grid era. And what does it look like for an individual who's trying to, opt out of the state and be a counter economist in an era where there's complete and total surveillance? This is not something that Konkin predicted or talked about. He was the very beginning stages of technology, and he knew, of course, the state would try to control in whatever way they can. But I started to read this as I was excited and reading the final work of Samuel Konkin and wanted to originally finish his work for him. Then I thought, what? Let me write my own book and show people how counter economics, as Samuel Konkin outlined it, could be used to opt out of the technocratic state. And that leads me to my new book, and this leads us to the subject of today's video. If you go to theconsciousresistance.com/countereconomics, all one word, you will get to this brand new page on my brand new book, which has now been renamed Counter Economics: How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. And it should be done by December 2019. And I'll just read this here. In my upcoming 5th book, I will provide tips and ideas for liberating yourself from the technocratic smart grid. I will start by expanding upon the philosophy of counter economics as established by Samuel Konkin. From there, we will discuss current technologies that threaten liberty and privacy and offer solutions to opting out of the coming social credit system, the 5G smart grid, and much more. In 1974, activist and author Samuel Edward Konkin III first outlined the strategy of using the underground or counter economy as a way to starve the state of resources. He believed this counter economy could create independently wealthy and black and gray market entrepreneurs that could create alternatives to the state and lay the foundation for a future stateless society. He called this strategy counter economics, and he called his combination of libertarian philosophy and counter economic strategy Agorism. And as I mentioned, he released his first book, The New Libertarian Manifesto, in 1979. Then Agorist Primer came out right after his death. And now his unfinished book, Counter Economics, has been released to the public. And I plan to take inspiration from those finished chapters of his work and update them for the digital age. This book will be packed with fresh evidence in support of the power of counter economics and tips on building counter economic communities. I will also answer important questions for anyone trying to avoid the increasingly watchful eyes of the state. What does it mean to be a counter-economist in the age of the surveillance state? How can one participate in the underground economy when Big Brother is always watching? Will it be possible to starve the state once social credit scores become mandatory? And I plan to answer those questions and more in this coming book. So, counter-economics is the basis for this. Samuel Konkin's work is the inspiration for it. And the book will feature new essays from me as well as previously published essays to explain what counter-economics is. But in the last part of the book, we're actually going to publish all of Konkin's finished chapters. They will be put in print, a print book for the first time ever. So this book here that I just showed you, Samuel Konkin's book, we will take the finished chapters and all the notes he wrote, and I will be putting them at the end of my book after I explain what counter economics is and how to opt out of it in the digital technocratic age, and then you can read his original work. So, one of my solutions for this is called the Counter-Economic Underground Railroad. I know I've taken 8 minutes to get you guys to this point of actually explaining what the Counter-Economic Underground Railroad is, but I felt like that build-up and that explanation was necessary, so I hope you are still with me. The Counter-Economic Underground Railroad takes the concept of the counter-economy, and it combines it with the Underground Railroad, which Harriet Tubman is most associated with, and there are other people, both Quakers and Methodists, as well as other freed slaves who are involved with liberating people through what has become known as the Underground Railroad. Now, I'll post a couple links in here just for those who are not very familiar with the Underground Railroad. It just FYI, it was not a literal railroad. It was not literally underground. As much as it has been reported, there was not, from what I've seen, an abundance of underground tunnels or things like that. Safe houses letting people free. It was a combination of, yes, some white folks, Quakers, and other people from the North who were, sympathetic to the slaves. And then it was also slaves and formerly freed slaves like Harriet Tubman and people like Frederick Douglass and others who were involved in this railroad, this underground passageway to help people escape this current system of slavery. So what does this mean in the context of the counter economy and in the context of my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State? Well, I still have plans to build an intentional community based around the principles that we explained in my third book, Manifesto of the Free Humans. Mindfulness, sovereignty of the individual, individual sovereignty, as well as permaculture, bringing those together with counter-economics and agorism to create the conscious agora. This is still my vision. This is still my plan. But as some of you have heard me say, I'm not sure the United States is the perfect place to do this. Honestly, I think that it's becoming increasingly totalitarian, and as I've explained in recent videos, the United States is going to require all domestic flyers to use facial recognition technology in the next 2 years, 2020 and 2021. It's already starting here in Houston airports, 2019. So this is going to become the new norm. Social credit scores are not far behind once we get the 5G system up and running and functional, once we get autonomous vehicles that can be shut off or driven wherever they want. Once we have the completely technocratic state, control will just be on a whole nother level, I think, than anything we can imagine. And it might already be there. They just haven't publicly rolled it out. But if there's any hope left, the hope, at least in my mind, is to get away from this, get out of the United States, not to abandon it, but to establish a safe house, a safe community, a safe space for people who are trying to escape this insanity. And maybe this is in South America. Maybe it's in Canada. Maybe it's in Mexico. Maybe it's hidden in the jungles. I don't know exactly, and I'm not going to say it on Facebook either way, or on YouTube. But wherever it is, the idea being that an individual or groups of individuals go establish a community that's built around these principles of being free and sovereignty and all these wonderful things that many of us care about. And then they establish some maybe infrastructure, maybe some gardens, some food, whatever they're able to. It could even just be a basic piece of land. But the idea being that as the United States becomes more totalitarian, that there could be an underground railroad that helps people escape from the United States to safer places, and also could funnel supplies in and out of the United States. So let's imagine that if the United States continues down the totalitarian path that it is, and as the Federal Reserve continues to destroy the currency, and generally as the world is facing climate disasters, whether man-made or created or fabricated or whatever you want to call it, these are all realities that are going on. Prices are going to go up. Governments are going to get more tyrannical and clamp down as there's more civil unrest and people become more tiresome, and they want to have freedom. They want good food and these kinds of things. It's going to get more and more intense. I imagine a situation where people who have taken the time to think ahead and to establish a foothold elsewhere could funnel in certain food supplies, certain maybe even weapons, maybe even, I don't know. I'm not going to even go too deep into it because I think you guys get what I'm going with. But also it could be a place where we help the sick, the elderly, our families, etc., get out of the United States if necessary. So I imagine the Underground Railroad, as it was a way, the way I see it, is a place where people were able to escape from slavery and to a freer place. Maybe that was the North, maybe that was Canada, but the same idea applies here. Is with the counter economy becoming increasingly watched by Big Brother, it's going to be much more difficult. I think people are going to be faced with situations. Right now, people are like, yeah, I don't pay taxes, or I'll watch these videos of all these banned people. But what happens when they start literally penalizing you and your family, and your score goes down because you watched my YouTube channel, or you watched the Corbett Report, or Truth Stream Media, or Mark Passio, or Max Egan, or any of these other people, whoever you may enjoy? If you watch those shows, watch those YouTube channels, and you notice your score starts going down, and next time you go try to rent a car, or get a new apartment, or take out a loan, or who knows, even just take public transportation, you're locked out because your score is so low. Are you just going to keep watching YouTube channels like mine, or are you going to say, you know what, maybe I should change my behavior because I couldn't go visit my family now that I'm blocked from public transportation, or I really need to get this loan, and you know what, if I keep watching these channels, then I'm not ever going to get it, so I just need to change my behavior. That's called social engineering. And I guarantee you most people are going to go along with the social engineering. Most people don't have the will, the strength, the confidence, or the network to continue operating and existing without submitting. And that's what they want. They want us to be submitting to their systems and without any hope of finding an alternative way. So it's up to us to create the alternative way, and this is what I'm calling the counter-economic underground railroad. And I will be expanding upon this in my book, Counter-Economics, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. But for now, I think that you guys understand. And there's really not a whole lot to it. Now, the book is going to explain it maybe a little bit more, maybe explain it a little bit more in depth with my words, because I'm just kind of ranting here on the video. But the general idea is that we can take people in and out of the United States, or anywhere else ideally, and bring in supplies. And again, this is playing off of Samuel Konkin's work, because if you look down here at some of the chapters he talked about, smuggling counter-economics. So this could be smuggling, human counter-economics. And again, all of this is non-violent, so it doesn't mean like human trafficking. There's a difference between smuggling and human trafficking. So he talks about international counter-economics, smuggling counter-economics, human counter-economics. And then there's also a page on group counter-economics, which I think was one of his unfinished chapters that he didn't get to. But to me, that is what I call freedom cells. So freedom cells start to form these pockets of freedom, of liberty, and we start to create networks of safe houses and safe spaces, kind of like the Underground Railroad did, and help people get in and out of the country, help people get supplies in and out of the country, and establish some level of resistance. And if resistance isn't possible, help people just survive and get the hell out if they need to. So that's what I call the counter-economic Underground Railroad. I will include all these links below, my essays, the various essays I touched on here. What is agorism? Vertical and horizontal agorism. The answer is economic secession. The counter-economy alternative. And the book review, as well as the link to my new book page. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I know I've been covering a lot of news lately, and I've been a little bit slow. It's been so busy, but I'm happy to get back to writing my books as soon as this campaign is over, this election's over. A lot of my efforts and energy are going to be going back to spreading and continuing, not going back, because I'm still spreading the Agorist counter-economic message. I'm just doing it in a new avenue, a new arena at the moment. But stay tuned, plugged in to the counter-economics page right here if you want to know when I actually set a release date. All that depends on my writing skills and how much time I take. But I hope you guys appreciate this. If you have more ideas, if you have examples from other countries throughout history of this kind of thing happening, bring it to my attention. I want to learn from others who have succeeded with smuggling people, with smuggling supplies. And I know this is going on in China. It's going on in North Korea. It happened in the Soviet Union. It happens everywhere that the state tries to clamp down, because that's the thing. You can't choke out the counter economy, the black market, the gray market. And this is why Konkin focused on it, because he realized there was strength in it. So I hope you guys will look more into it. If you're seeking solutions, and solutions that don't just involve voting for a new president or assuming that the system's going to fix itself, we have to build something better outside of their hands. And if we all come together, it's possible. If we don't, then we're all going to suffer individually. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.